welcome friends. I'm Avalon.
I'm Sabrina.
And welcome to the channel where
Yes.
we do readings and play with dogs and other fun stuff.
Exactly. Fun stuff.
So today we'll be doing chapter, I believe it's 10. 10?
11.
Are we already on 10? No, we're on 10.
Oh, we're on
We're on
10. I was jumping ahead.
She's just getting excited.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's going to happen with like Stefan and Elena and how that's going to grow
Yeah, me too.
between them two.
Especially because they're both kind of a little stalkerish.
Yeah, they both have
Stalker
stalker's
tendencies. We're a little askew today.
Yeah, it's been a rough little week for this little one.
Yeah, I got hit by a car.
On her motorcycle, so
Yeah,
we've all been like helping her, banding together and helping her call the insurance and food and make sure she's taken care of.
But
she's okay.
I'm okay. My
She
ankle's not broken. We're just
little ankle situation.
We're just icing and elevating right now.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to continue to walk.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, to the story. What happened last time?
Yes. Recap. I don't know. They're all jumbled.
Went to go visit Vicky and.
Oh yeah, and Vicky freaked out on Elena, saying like, "You're evil. It's all your fault," and she's still in like this traumatic. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, like disarray, basically.
Yeah.
And she's blaming Elena for what had happened to her in the graveyard, and Elena's like, "What are you talking about? Like, I didn't do anything." And then Bonnie or Meredith, one of the two, mentioned to Elena after they were kicked out of the house that she was very cold, that Vicky was very cold to the touch. So I had predicted that she possibly got transformed into a vampire, and she's currently changing, and maybe is seeing like a vision of something in the future.
And then they went over to somebody else's house. Who did they go to?
They went to Stefan's house.
And then Elena found something. What did she
her
find?
silk ribbon in a little chest.
A little box. Stefan was trying to hide from her because he's got stalker tendencies.
Yes. So on to chapter 10.
On to chapter 10. October 7th, about 8 a.m. Dear Diary, I'm writing this during trig class, and I hope Mrs. Harplin doesn't see me. I don't have the time to write last night, even though I wanted to. Yesterday was a crazy mixed-up day, just like the night of the homecoming dance. Sitting here in school this morning, I almost feel like everything that's happened this weekend was a dream. The bad things were so bad, but the good things were so very, very good. I'm not going to press criminal charges against Tyler. He's suspended from school, though, and off the football team. So's Dick for being drunk at the dance. Nobody is saying so, but I think a lot of people think he was responsible for what happened to Vicky. Bonnie's sister-in-law, Tyler, at the clinic I saw Bonnie's sister saw Tyler at the clinic yesterday, and she said he had 2 black eyes and his whole face was purple. I can't help worrying about what's going to happen when he and Dick get back to school. They have more reason than ever to hate Stefan now. Which brings me to Stefan. When I woke up this morning, I panicked, thinking, what if it was all true? What if it never happened? Or if he's changed his mind? And Aunt Judith was worried at breakfast because I couldn't eat again. But then when I got to school, I saw him in the corridor by the office, and we looked at each other, and I knew. Just before he turned away, he smiled sort of wryly, and I understood that too. And he was right. It was better not to go up to each other in a public hallway, not unless we want to give the securities a thrill. We were very definitely together. Now I just have to find a way to explain all this to Jean-Claude. Haha. What I don't understand is why Stefan isn't as happy about it as I am. When we're with each other, I feel how he feels, and I know how much he wants me and how much he cares. There's almost a desperate hunger inside of him when he kisses me, as if he wants to pull the soul out of my body, like a black hole that... Still. October 7th, now 2 p.m. Well, a little break there because Miss Harplin caught me. She even started to read what I had written out loud, but then I think the subject matter steamed up her glasses and she stopped. She was not amused. I'm too happy to care about minor things like flunking trigonometry. Stefan and I had lunch together, or at least we went off into a corner of the field and sat down with my lunch. So sweet. He didn't even bother to bring anything, and of course, as it turned out, I couldn't eat either. We couldn't touch each other as much. We didn't. We just talked and looked at each other a lot. I wanted to touch him more than any boy I've ever known. And I know he wants to too, but he's holding back on me. That's what I understand. Why he's fighting like this. Why he's holding back. Yesterday in his room, I found proof positive that he was watching me from the beginning. You remember how I told you that the second day of school, Bonnie and Meredith and I were in the cemetery? Well, yesterday in Stefan's room, I found the apricot ribbon I was wearing that day. I remember it falling out of my hand while I was running, and he must have picked it up and kept it. I haven't told him I know because he obviously wants to keep it a secret, but that shows, doesn't it, that he cares about me. I'll tell you someone else who is not amused. Caroline. Apparently she's been dragging him off into the photography room for lunch every day. And when he doesn't show up today, she went searching until she found us. Poor Stefan, he'd forgotten about her completely, and he was shocked at himself. Once she left, a nasty and healthy shade of green, I might add, he told me that how he'd attached herself to him the first week of school. She said she'd noticed he didn't really eat lunch, and she didn't either since she was on a diet. And why didn't they go someplace quiet to relax? He wouldn't really say anything bad about her, which I think is his idea of manners again. A gentleman doesn't do that. But he did say there was nothing at all between them, and for Carolyn, I think being forgotten is more worse than having rocks thrown at her. I wonder why Stefan hasn't been eating lunch, though. It's strange for a football player. Uh-oh, Mr. Tanner just walked by, and I slammed my notepad over. This diary just in time. Bonnie is snickering behind her history book. I can see her shoulders shaking, and Stefan, who's in front of me, looks as tense as if he's going to leap out of his chair any minute. Matt is giving me, "You nut," looks, and Caroline is glaring. I'm being very, very innocent, writing with my eyes fixed on Tanner up front, so that if this is a little bit wobbly and messy, you'll understand why. For the last month, I haven't really been myself. I haven't been able to think clearly or concentrate on anything but Stefan. There is so much I've left undone, and I'm almost scared. I'm supposed to be in charge of decorations for the haunted house, and I haven't done one thing about it yet. Now, I've got exactly 3.5 weeks to get it organized, and I want to be with Stefan. I could quit the committee, but that would leave Bonnie and Meredith holding the bag, and I keep remembering that Matt said when I asked him to get Stefan to come to the dance, "You want everyone and everything revolving around Elena Gilbert." That isn't true, or at least if it had been in the past, I'm not going to let it be true anymore. This is going to sound completely stupid, but I want to be worthy of Stefan. I know he wouldn't let the guys on the team down just to suit his own convenience. I want him to be proud of me. I want him to love me as much as I love him. "Hurry up," called Bonnie from the doorway of the gym. Beside her was the high school janitor, Mr. Shelby, and he stood waiting. Elena cast one last glance at the distant figures on the football field, then reluctantly crossed the blacktop to join Bonnie. "I just wanted to tell Stefan where I was going," she said. After a week of being with Stefan, she still felt a thrill of excitement when saying his name. Every night this week, he'd come to her house, appearing at the door around sunset, hands in pockets, wearing his jacket with his collar turned up. He usually took a walk in the dusk or sat on the porch talking. Although nothing was said about it, Elena knew that Stefan's way of making sure they weren't alone in private together. Since the night of the dance, he'd been sure of that, protecting her honor. Elena thought wryly with a pang, because she knew in her heart that there was more to it than that. "He can live without you for one evening," said Bonnie callously. "If we get talking to him, you'll never get away, and I like to get home in time for some kind of dinner." "Hello, Mr. Shelby," said Elena to the janitor, who was still patiently waiting. To her surprise, he closed one eye in a solemn wink at her. "Where's Meredith?" she added. "Here," said a voice behind her, and Meredith appeared with a cardboard box of file folders and notepads in her arms. "I've got some stuff from your locker." "Is that all of you? Is that all of you?" said Mr. Shelby. "All right now. You girls leave the door shut and locked, you hear? That way nobody can get in." Bonnie, about to enter, pulled up short. "You're sure that nobody's already in?" she said wryly. Wearily, Elena gave her a push between the shoulder blades. Hurry up, she mimicked unkindly. I want to get home in time for dinner. There's nobody inside, said Mr. Shelby's mouth twitching under his mustache. But you girls yell if you want anything. I'll be around. The door slammed shut behind them with a curiously final sound. Work, said Meredith resignedly, and put the box on the floor. Elena nodded, looking up and down at the big empty room. Every year, the student council held a haunted house for the fundraiser. Elena had been on the decorating committee for the last 2 years, along with Bonnie and Meredith, but it was different being chairman. She had to make decisions that would affect everyone, and she couldn't even rely on what she'd done in the years past. The haunted house was usually set up in the lumberyard warehouse, but with the growing uneasiness about the town, it had been decided that the school gym was safer. For Elena, it meant rethinking the whole interior design, and with less than 3 weeks from now until Halloween. It actually looks pretty spooky in here, said Meredith quietly. And there was something disturbing about being in the big closed room, Elena thought. She found herself lowering her voice. Let's measure it first, she said. They moved down the room, their footsteps echoing hollowly. All right, said Elena when they finished. Let's get to work. She tried to shake off her feeling of uneasiness, telling herself that it was ridiculous to feel unsettled in the school gym, with Bonnie and Meredith beside her and the entire football team practicing not 200 yards away. The three of them sat on the bleachers with pens and notebooks in hand. Elena and Meredith consulted the design sketches for previous years while Bonnie bit her pen and gazed around thoughtfully. Well, here's the gym, said Meredith, making a quick sketch in her notebook, and here's where the people are going to be coming in. Now, we could have the bloody corpse at the very end. By the way, who's going to be the bloody corpse this year? Coach Lyman, I think. He did a good job last year, and he keeps the football guys in line, Elena pointed out their sketch. Okay, we'll partition this off and make this the medieval torture chamber. They'll go straight out of that into the room of the living dead. I think we should have druids, said Bonnie abruptly. Have what? Said Elena. And then as Bonnie started to yell, druids! She waved a quelling hand. All right, I remember, but why? Because they're the ones who invented Halloween, really. It started out with one of their holy days, when they would build fires and put out turnips with faces carved into them to keep evil spirits away. They believed it was the day when the line between the living and the dead was thinnest. And they were scary, Elena. They performed human sacrifices. We could sacrifice Coach Lyman. Actually, that's not a bad idea, said Meredith. The bloody corpse could be a sacrifice, on a stone altar with a knife and pools of blood around him. And then you could get up really close, and then he suddenly sits up. And it gives you heart failure, said Elena.
For a high school kid. Heart failure.
Anyway. And it gives you heart failure, said Elena. But she had to admit it was a good idea. Definitely scary. It made her feel a little sick thinking about it. All that blood. But it was really only Caro syrup. Really. The other girls had gone quiet, too. From the boys' locker room, they could hear the sound of water running and the lockers banging, and over that indistinct voices shouting. Practice is over, murmured Bonnie. It must be dark outside. Yes, and our hero is getting all washed up, said Meredith, cocking an eyebrow at Elena. Want a peek? I wish, said Elena, only half jokingly. Somehow, indefinably, the atmosphere in the room had darkened. Just at that moment, she did wish to see Stefan. Just in that moment, she did wish she could see Stefan to be with him. Have you heard anything more about Vicki Bennett? She asked. Well, said Bonnie after a moment, I did hear that her parents are getting her to see a psychiatrist. A shrink? Why? Well, I guess they think that those things she told us were hallucinations of some kind, and I heard her nightmares are pretty bad. Oh, said Elena. The sounds from the boys' locker room were fading, and they heard the outside door slam. Hallucinations, she thought. Hallucinations and nightmares? For some reason, she suddenly remembered that night in the graveyard. That night when Bonnie had sent them all running from something none of them could see. We better get back to business, said Meredith. Elena shook herself out of a reverie and nodded. We could have a graveyard, Bonnie said tentatively, as if she were reading Elena's thoughts. In the haunted house, I mean. No, said Elena sharply. No, we'll stick with what we have. She nodded in a calmer voice and bent over her pad again. Once again, there were no sound from the soft scratching of pens and the rustle of paper. Good, said Elena at last. Now we only need to measure the different portions. Someone's going to have to get behind the bleachers. What now? The lights on the gym had flickered and gone down to half power. Oh no, said Meredith, exasperated. The lights flickered again, went out, and returned dimly once more. I can't read a thing, said Elena, staring at what now seemed to be a featureless piece of white paper. She looked up at Bonnie and Meredith and saw two white blobs of faces. Ooh. Something must be going on with the emergency generator, said Meredith. I'll get Mr. Shelby. Can we just finish tomorrow? Bonnie said plaintively. Tomorrow's Saturday, said Elena, and we're supposed to have this done by last week. I'll get Shelby, said Meredith again. Come on, Bonnie, you're going with me. Elena began. We could all go, but Meredith interrupted. If we all go and we can't find them, then we can't get back in. Come on, Bonnie. It's only inside the school. But it's dark there. It's dark everywhere. It's nighttime. Come on. With two of us, we'll be safe. She dragged an unwilling Bonnie to the door. Elena, don't let anybody else in. As if you had to tell me, said Elena, letting them out and then watching them go a few paces down the hall. At this point, they began to emerge with the darkness. She stepped back and shut the door. Well, this was a fine mess, as her mother used to say. She moved over to the cardboard box Meredith had brought and began stacking filing folders and notebooks back inside of it. In the light, she could see them only as vague shapes. There was no sound at all but her own breathing and the sounds she made. She was alone in the dim room. Someone was watching her. She didn't know how she knew, but she was sure.
Stefan.
Maybe. I'm assuming it's Stefan. Is that your prediction?
Yeah. I'm assuming it's Stefan watching her. I think he's stuck in.
Him being stalkerish tendencies.
Kind of like a stalker boyfriend. Almost.
Stage 4 clinger.
Yeah. Stage 4 clinger. Anyway.
She didn't know how she knew, but she was sure. Someone was behind her in the dark gymnasium watching her. Eyes in the dark, the old man had said. Vicky had said it too, and now there were eyes on her. She whirled quickly to face the room, straining her own eyes to see into the shadows, trying not to even breathe. She was terrified that if she made a sound, that thing would come and get her. But she could see nothing, hear nothing. The bleachers were dim, menacing shapes stretched out into nothingness, and the far end of the room was simply a featureless gray fog. Dark mist, she thought, and she could feel every muscle agonizingly tense as she listened desperately. Oh God, what was that soft whispering sound? It must be her imagination. Please let it be her imagination. Suddenly her mind was clear. She had to get out of this place now. There was real danger here, not just a fantasy. Something was out there, something evil, something that wanted her, and she was all alone. Something moved in the shadows. Her scream froze in her throat. Her muscles were frozen too, held helpless by their terror, and by some nameless force. Helplessly, she watched as the shape in the darkness moved out of the shadows and towards her. It seemed almost as if the darkness itself had come to life and was coalescing as she watched, taking it to make form, human form, the form of a young man. I'm sorry if I frightened you. The voice was pleasant, with the slight accent she couldn't place. It didn't sound sorry at all. Relief was
Klaus.
I don't know.
Or the Raven.
Could be the Raven. Could be Klaus. Could be Damon.
Could be.
The voice was pleasant, with a slight accent she couldn't place. It didn't sound sorry at all. Relief was so sudden and complete that it was painful. She slumped and heard her own breath sigh out. It was only a guy, some former student or assistant of Mr. Shelby's, an ordinary guy who's smiling faintly, as if it amused him to see her almost pass out. Well, perhaps not quite ordinary. He was remarkably good-looking. His face was pale in the artificial twilight, but she could see the features were clearly defined and nearly perfect under the shock of black hair. Those cheekbones were every sculptor's dream, and he'd been almost invisible because he'd been wearing soft black boots, black jeans, black sweater, and a black leather jacket.
Damon. It's Damon. Just
You
Damon.
going with it?
I'm going with it.
Damon.
Damon.
He was still smiling faintly. Elena's relief turned into anger. How did you get in? She demanded. And what are you doing here? Nobody else is supposed to be in the gym. I came in the door, he said. His voice was soft, cultured, but he could still hear the amusement that she found and found it a little disconcerting. All the doors are locked, she said flatly and accusingly. He raised an eyebrow and smiled. Are they? Elena felt another quiver of fear, hairs lifting on the back of her neck. They were supposed to be, she said in the coldest voice she could manage. You're angry, he said gravely. I said I was sorry to frighten you. I wasn't frightened, she snapped. She felt foolish in front of him somehow, like a child being humored by someone much older and more knowledgeable. It made him even angrier. It was just startled. I was just startled, she continued, which is hardly surprising that you were lurking in the darkness like that. Interesting things happen in the dark sometimes. He was still laughing at her. She could tell by his eyes. He had taken a step closer, and she could see those eyes were unusual, dark black with odd lights in them, as if he could look deeper and deeper until you fell into them and went falling forever. She realized she was staring. Why didn't the lights come on? She wanted to get out of here. She moved away, putting the end of the bleacher between them, and stacked the last of the folders into the box. Forget the rest of the work for tonight. All she wanted to do now was leave. But the continuing silence made her uneasy. He was just standing there, unmoving, watching her. Why didn't he say something? Did you come looking for somebody? She was annoyed with herself for being the one to speak. He was still gazing at her, those eyes fixed on her in a way that made her more uncomfortable. She swallowed. With his eyes on her lips, he murmured, Oh, yes. What? She'd forgotten what she'd asked. Her cheeks and throat were flushing, burning with blood. She felt so lightheaded. If only he'd stop looking at her. Yes, I came here looking for someone, he repeated, no louder than before. Then, in one step, he moved towards her so that they were separated only by the corner of one bleacher seat. Elena couldn't breathe. He was standing so close enough to touch. She could smell the faint hint of cologne in the leather jacket, and his eyes still held on hers. She could not look away from them. They were like no eyes she'd ever seen, black as midnight, the pupils dilated like a cat's. They filled her vision as he leaned towards her, bending his head down to hers. She felt her own eyes half closed, losing focus. She felt her head tilt back, her lips part. No! Just in time, she whipped her head to the side. She felt as if she just pulled herself back from the edge of a precipice. What am I doing? She thought in shock. I was about to let him kiss me, a total stranger, someone I just met only a few minutes ago. But that wasn't the worst thing. For those few minutes, something unbelievable had happened. For those few minutes, she'd forgotten Stefan. But now his image filled her mind, and the longing for him was like a physical pain in her body. She wanted Stefan, wanted his arms around her, wanted to be safe with him. She swallowed, her nostrils flared as she breathed hard. She tried to keep her voice steady and dignified. I'm going to leave now, she said. If you're looking for somebody, you'll have to look somewhere else. He was looking at her oddly, with an expression she couldn't quite understand. It was a mixture of annoyance and grudging respect, and something else, something hot and fierce that frightened her in a different way. He waited until her hand was on the doorknob to answer, and his voice was soft but serious, with no trace of amusement. Perhaps I've already found her, Elena. When she turned, she could see nothing in the darkness.
I think that's Damon.
You think it's Damon?
I really do. That just describes him. It just does.
And he had a thing for Catherine, too.
Exactly.
And she looks like Catherine.
Yes. I think it's Damon. We'll find out a little bit later. But, oh my gosh.
I was just kind of surprised that they're like, I should have had this Halloween thing done a week ago when they had 3 weeks still to Halloween.
Yeah.
I was like, that's kind of a long time in advance to have your gym all
decorated
where you can't really use it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. If it was me, like, it would be like the week before, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the weekend before.
Yeah. Where you just get a whole bunch of people to help you and just set it up.
Yeah, that's the point of having like a
Committee.
committee.
Yeah. So when they were like, "Oh yeah, we should have had this a week ago," I was like, you got all of October. Like, it's a long time. Like, I think you got more time than that.
Got a little bit of a while to go there. So yeah, I think something's gonna happen at the Halloween party or dance.
It's not a dance. It's a haunted house.
A haunted house thing. Yes.
And then there's Bonnie with her druids. I want druids. I'm part druid.
I'm a witch.
I'm a witch.
She just don't know it yet.
Yeah. So her having this like excitement about the druids.
Yeah. And like
that
Halloween.
Just keeps popping up.
Yeah. I like it. I like to see more of that from her. And then Meredith, we're not really getting much more information on Meredith. She's just having like little
kind of
sentences.
Just like a plain character. Like
because she's gonna die off.
Is that your prediction?
Yeah.
This is why she's not in the movies. She just died off.
She kind of died off early, so yeah.
I don't think there was even a Meredith.
There wasn't.
So I think that she like a red shirt from like Star Trek. They only brought her in to kill her off.
Yeah, basically. I think that's what's happening in this book. She's just gonna die really soon, I think.
Watch, Vicky, like, drinks her.
I think so. That's kind of what I was starting to think. The wheels are turning.
Vicky's gonna drink her blood.
Yes, I think so. I think Vicky's gonna completely change into a vampire, kill her mom, because mom's going to be trying to like, calm her down. What's going on? And kill her mom in the process. Therefore, completing the transformation. But yet she's still hungry. And then Meredith is kind of la la da 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 da. And they run into each other. And then Vicky's just going to kill her.
Just like that?
Just like that.
Meredith is really going to say da 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 da.
No, she's not going to say that. But, she's going to be in her own world. And then be surprised to see Vicky, like, you were so sick, like, what's wrong, like, are you better? And then...
Or maybe it happens at the Halloween...
Yeah, the haunted house.
Instead of just random...
Well, not random da-da-da-da-da, but, like, she's doing something mindlessly, like, mind-numbing task, and she just runs into her, and that's what I was trying to allude to, is something that it will happen at the haunted house.
Gotcha.
That's where things are gonna go down.
We need to make our theory board. We'll try and do that for next time.
Yeah.
We'll try and make a theory board.
Yeah, we'll have it posted back here or something.
Yeah. We'll just like stick it up on the back of the sofa.
Yeah. It'll be good.
Yeah.
Okay, well let us know what you guys think or predict or feel or comments, concerns, anything you want to tell us. Communicate with us. Also check out our Instagram, Fun and Friends. That's where we post some behind the scenes stuff.
And remind you about episodes and if stuff comes up like me getting hit by a car.
Like my trip. Surprise.
We'll usually try and post notifications on there about things that are going on.
And let you know if we're uploading late or not.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right.
Okay guys, have fun, be safe.
Bye.
Do good.